The Mystery in Venice by Geronimo Stilton. Geronimo Stilton, a learned and brainy mouse, editor of the Rodent's Gazette. Thea Stilton, Geronimo's sister and a special correspondent at the Rodent's Gazette. Trap Stilton, an awful joker, Geronimo's cousin and owner of the store Cheap Junk for Less. Benjamin Stilton, a sweet and loving 9-year-old mouse, Geronimo's favorite nephew. I'm dragging from jet lag. It was a hot summer day and I was exhausted. I had just returned from a trip to the Restful Tales resort in Swiss Alps and I was dragging from jet lag. So much for feeling restful. I could barely keep my eyes open. Don't get me wrong, I love visiting Switzerland. I mean, who wouldn't love the place where they invented cheese? But flying back and forth between time zones had left me with a terrible case of jet lag. Do you know what jet lag is? It's something that happens to rodents when they travel by plane and cross from one time zone to another. Your body clock feels like it's one time, but the local clock says it's another. It makes your insides feel like curdled cheese. Time zones. The earth is divided into 24 sections called time zones. Every section corresponds to an hour. When you travel across continents, your watch must be adjusted an hour for every section you cross. If you go east, the hour is added, and if you go west, the hour is subtracted. So, if it's 8 p.m. in London, it is 3 p.m. in New York. First, your head gets heavy. Then, your eyes begin to close. Then, your stomach is upset. And then, your tail droops. Plus, the worst part is that at night, your body thinks it's morning and you can't fall asleep. Cheese niblets! I hate jet lag. This is one of the many reasons that I have never loved to travel. In fact, I guess you could say my two most favorite places in the world are my cozy mouse hole and my office at the Rodent's Gazette. Oh, how rude! I haven't even introduced myself. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton, and I am the publisher of the Rodent's Gazette, the most famous newspaper on Mouse Island. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, I was telling you how much I was dragging from jet lag. But luckily, I had a plan. I was going to put my anti-jet lag remedy into action. A warm bath, pajamas, slippers, and a cup of tea, and right to bed. But as soon as I started to relax, the phone rang. I got out of the tub grumbling. First, I couldn't find my bath towel, so I grabbed one that was way too small. Next, I headed toward the living room, dripping soapy water everywhere. Meanwhile, the telephone kept ringing and ringing. Rats! It was giving me a mouse-sized headache. As I raced for the phone, I slipped on a puddle and fell on my tail. Ouch! I tried to get up, but lost my balance and fell towards right on my snout. Thump! Finally, I reached the phone and stammered, Hello? The rodent of my dreams. From the other side of the line, a sweet voice responded, Hi G, you sound funny. Am I bothering you? It was Petunia Prettypaws, the rodent of my dreams. I should have said something clever, charming, and unforgettable. Instead, I turned purple with embarrassment. Good thing I don't have a video phone. My tongue felt like a stale brick of cheddar, and I spit out silly sentences. No. That is, what I mean is, I am Geronimo and you no disturb me. I mean, you're not. You would never. That is. She interrupted me, sounding worried. Are you sure you're feeling all right? I touched the bump on my head. Then I rubbed the bruise on my tail and felt my whiskers droop. I have jet lag and bruised tail and a terrible headache, I wailed. She was silent for a minute. Oh, too bad, she said kindly. I wanted to invite you. At that moment, my spirits rose. Okay, I'll come. I'm feeling better already, I squeaked. There was no way I was going to miss spending time with Petunia. Great, I'll be by to get you in 10 minutes, she replied. I hung up the phone and smiled. Yes! I still felt awful from the jet lag. My head was pounding, my stomach hurt, but I didn't care. I was too happy. Petunia had invited me to go out with her. My heart was beating a mile a minute, and I began to skip around the room, shouting, "Hooray!" Then suddenly I realized that I hadn't asked her where she wanted to invite me. Did she want me to take a romantic stroll at sunset? Or did she want me to see a documentary about nature with her? Or maybe she wanted to have a candlelight dinner? I chewed my whiskers. How was I supposed to dress? Elegant and sophisticated? Sporty and casual? Normal, like every day. With my mind racing, I began to try on all different combinations of clothes at rap speed. Soon shirts and pants and ties and socks littered the room, but nothing looked good. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. I was so excited, I ran to open the door without thinking about how I was dressed. Ding dong. I opened the door with a charming smile. But in just a few seconds, my face went from happy to shocked to embarrassed to crushed. Do you want to know why? It was because as soon as I opened the door, I saw that Petunia wasn't alone. She was with my sister Tia and Petunia's pesky niece, Bugsy Wugsy. Goodbye romantic stroll and candlelight dinner. At that moment, Bugsy looked me up and down and shrieked, Uncle G, why are you dressed like a clown? Only then did I remember that I was dressed in a ridiculous outfit. I turned purple. Oh, haha, I was just kidding around. I'll just go change, I mumbled, trying to laugh it out. But before I got a chance, Tia grabbed me and pulled me out of the house. No time, Jer. She squeaked, the early mouse gets the best bargains. Petunia added, she's right, G. The best pieces disappear in a hurry. I tried to protest, but they pushed me into Tia's sports car, shouting, Hooray! We need to go. Can I at least know where we're going? I asked. To the flea market, Bugsy giggled. Then the three of them screamed, We're going shopping! At that moment, my spirits took a nosedive. Flea market? Shopping? Oh, why hadn't I stayed home? If there's one thing I hate almost as much as traveling, it's shopping. But before I had time to protest, Tia's car screeched to a halt and Bugsy screamed in my ear, "Move it, Uncle G, we're here." We had arrived at the New Mouse City flea market. Have you ever been to a flea market? It's not a place where they sell fleas. It's a market where they sell trinkets, used clothing, old dishes, pictures, and lots of other junk. A surprise gift. As soon as we arrived, Bugsy, Thea, and Petunia immediately began to browse the stands with enthusiasm. I, on the other paw, felt like I would explode from boredom. What was so exciting about other rodents' junk? I tried closing my eyes and pretending I was back home in my cozy mouse hole, but it didn't work. As I plodded glumly through the market, I could hear everyone chuckling about how I was dressed. What's with the slippers? How bizarre! Who's that ridiculous mouse? How humiliating! I turned purple with embarrassment. Quickly, I grabbed a hat from a rack and shoved it on my head, hoping that no one would recognize me. Unfortunately, the elderly rodent behind the stand thought I was stealing it and began whacking me with her umbrella. "Thief!" she screamed. To get her to stop, I tore the hat off my head, at which point she recognized me. "Aren't you Geronimo Stilton, the famous writer?" she shouted. "No, ma'am. I'm just a rodent who looks a lot like him," I squeaked. That made her even angrier. "How dare you make fun of me? I recognize you. You are Stilton, or my name's not Mildred-Pawned Busybody," she shrieked. Then she whacked me again with her umbrella. Youch! Stars swam before my eyes. Oh, why hadn't I stayed home? Finally, the old lady stopped hitting me and I told her I was doing research for my next book. I was trying to keep a low profile. Then, to be sure she would leave me alone, I began to carefully examine the merchandise at the first stand I came across. It was a stand that sold crystal gondolas. Do you know what a gondola is? It is a boat mice used to travel around the canals in the city of Venice, Italy. I picked one up and stared at it closely, turning it over and over in my paws. What a hideous piece of junk, I thought. As I mentioned, the gondola was made of crystal with colored stones and fake diamonds on the prawn. If you clapped your paws, lights blinked on and off, and a silly song began to play. Venice is the place for you, pizza pies and skies of blue, tasty treats and starry nights, friendly mice and pretty sights. When I was sure the old lady had left, I put the ugly gondola back. 3 torturous hours later, when we were ready to leave, Petunia approached me. She gave me a kiss on the whiskers and handed me a package. "This is for you, G," she said. "I wanted to apologize for dragging you out shopping." I unwrapped the package and found the hideous gondola. Petunia smiled. "I'm not sure why you like it, but I saw you staring at it, so I bought it for you," she explained. What could I say? I didn't have the courage to tell her that the glittering gondola was the ugliest thing I laid my eyes on. So I just mumbled, "Thanks," A mysterious call for help. We climbed back into Tia's sports car and headed for home. As we drove, the crystal gondola kept lighting up and playing its annoying song. The music was so loud, mice on the streets shot me disgusted looks as we passed by. How humiliating! When we arrived at my mouse hole, I said goodbye and ran inside. I couldn't wait to get out of my ridiculous outfit and put on my regular clothes. After I got changed, I looked around for somewhere to put the gondola. Since it was a gift from Petunia, I couldn't hide it in the back of a drawer somewhere, or under the bed, or in a closet. I needed to leave it in plain sight. I started wandering around the house looking for the perfect spot. On the mantel? No, it wouldn't fit. On the coffee table? No, it clashed with the carpet. On the nightstand? No, if that annoying song went off, I'd never get to sleep. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. I ran to open it, but the door burst open and I was knocked over by my cousin Trap. The crystal gondola fell to the ground, breaking into 1,000 pieces. Crash! I tried to put the pieces back together as tears fell from my eyes. Even though the gondola was hideous, it was a gift from Petunia. I was devastated. Trap, how could you? I wailed. It was a present from Petunia. What's the big deal? He chuckled. It's not like she's your girlfriend or anything. I glared at him. My cousin knows I have a crush on Petunia and I was too shy to tell her. Of course, that doesn't stop him from teasing me about it. She bought me that crystal gondola from the flea market today, I squeaked. Now that you broke it, she'll think I didn't like it. I'll never be able to tell her I like her. And it's all your fault. My cousin giggled. You should thank me, cousin, he replied. From the little that is left, I can really tell that thing was hideous. I ignored him and started picking up tiny pieces of crystal in hopes of fixing the gondola. It was then that I realized that a piece of rolled up paper had been stuck inside the gondola. I unrolled it and read these words. Help, save me. I can't. I gulped. It was a dramatic call for help. I had to do something immediately. Look at this, I squeaked, shoving the paper under my cousin's nose. Someone is in danger and needs help. Maybe it's a damsel in distress. Trap just rolled his eyes. You'll never change, dear mister. How many times do I have to tell you to get your head out of those adventure books? You imagine you see damsels that need saving everywhere. Just wait, I'm going to tell your almost girlfriend. Geronimo thinks he's a knight in a shining armor. Then he left in a hurry to go and blab it all to Petunia. Destination Venice. I tried to grab Tap's tail as he ran off, but he managed to slip away. Rats! Who knew what he would say to Petunia? Maybe he'd say I was smashing her crystal gondola to bits. Or maybe he'd say I was running around pretending to be a knight in shining armor. Either way, I'd never have a chance with her now. Still, there was no time to worry about it. Someone out there needed my help, and I was just the mouse for the job. After all, I may not be the bravest mouse on the block, but I am a true gentle mouse. If someone needed assistance, I had to take action. With a sigh, I picked up the mysterious paper and began to examine it very carefully. Who knows how long it had been inside the gondola? The writing was neat, and the dots on the exclamation points were in the shape of hearts, which made me think the author was female. Plus, the paper was scented. Right at that moment, I noticed a small tag attached to what remained of the crystal gondola. It was a certified authenticity. It said authentic Murano crystal. So the gondola had been made in Italy on the island of Murano in Venice. Before you could say squeak, I had packed my bags. I went to the airport and boarded a flight to Venice. I didn't say anything to anyone. What would I have said? That I was leaving to solve a mystery in Venice? That I was going to save a damsel who maybe needed help? I knew it seemed absurd. Everyone would laugh at me. As soon as I boarded the plane, I fell asleep. I woke up only when the plane was landing at the airport in Venice. That's when a voice next to me squeaked, "Wake up, my precious fuzzy fur, we've arrived." I opened my eyes and realized that I had fallen asleep with my head resting on the shoulder of a strange lady mouse. I jumped up, purple from embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," I stammered. She smiled at me, batting her big, extremely made up eyes. Her long, fake eyelashes nearly slapped me in the snout. "Don't worry, your handsome little self. How about we do some sightseeing together in Venice, my precious darling?" she crooned. My fur turned red. I mumbled something about having a lot of things to do, but she didn't take the hint. "You have things to do?" she squeaked. "So you mean you're not here on vacation? You actually live in Venice? How romantic! I knew that I would find the mouse of my dreams on my trip to Venice." I gulped. This mouse was starting to scare me. I slowly backed away from her, then turned on my tail and took off at breakneck speed. "I'm not from Venice," I yelled over my shoulder. "You misunderstood me." She followed me, but I lost her in the crowd. When I arrived at the water taxi stand, however, I saw her pink spotted hat in the crowd. How had she followed me? I made a quick about face, but she had seen me. "Why are you running?" she yelled. "Why are you abandoning me, my sweet little Venetian mouse?" What could I do? I started running again. "I'm not from Venice," I shouted back at her. All the rodents in the taxi line looked at me with disgust. They started talking about me. What a heartless rodent. Who leaves his girlfriend like that? He's not gentle mouse. I would have loved to defend myself. I pride myself on my reputation as a true gentle mouse. But there was no time. I had a mission to accomplish. I had to solve the mystery in Venice. I didn't have time to deal with a clingy lady mouse in polka dot hat. I ran down the deck with my paws in the air. The rodent of my nightmares. I scanned the water for an available motorboat taxi and jumped on the first one I came to. The driver, a guy with huge muscles and black mustache, asked, "Where would you like to go, sir?" "Wherever you want, just as long as it's far away from here," I squeaked, hoping the clingy lady mouse was still way behind me. The driver took off and headed toward the city. Only when we were safely splashing through the open water did I turn to admire the Grand Canal. The Grand Canal. A little over 2 miles long, the Grand Canal is the main waterway in Venice. It divides the historic center into two parts. Along this canal, you can find magnificent buildings that were constructed between the 12th and 18th centuries. It is also the place where Venetians celebrate the historic regatta. What a fab mouse sight! Just then, a steamboat filled with tourists taking pictures pulled up next to us. Among them, I recognized a familiar pink polka dot hat. It was her, the rodent of my nightmares. I groaned. I had to do something. Then I got an idea. I asked the driver if he could sell me his hat so I could disguise myself. The driver's eyes lit up. I guess he could tell I was desperate. "How much are you willing to pay?" he asked. I gave him everything I had in my wallet, but he wanted my gold watch too. Finally, I put on the hat. It didn't work. The admirer recognized me anyway. She shouted at me from the steamboat, "Oh, fuzzy fur, why are you running away from me? I am your true love. Come back." Venice. Venice is a unique city because it is built entirely on water. It extends along 120 separate islands divided by canals, but connected by more than 400 bridges. Venice is one of the most fascinating cities in the world for art lovers. Bell towers, churches rich with works of art, antique buildings with finely decorated facades, and houses with mysterious courtyards all face onto the lagoon. On the inside, the city is a labyrinth of streets, small squares, and small covered passages that make it even more mysterious. In Venice, you can't get around by bus or by car. Instead, people travel by steamboats, motorboats, or gondolas, which are typical Venetian rowboats. "Help! I'm drowning!" Suddenly, the taxi driver grabbed me by the tail and tossed me into the Grand Canal. "That'll teach you to mistreat your true love," he squeaked. "But wait, I can explain," I wailed. "It's all a misunderstanding." I could hear the mouse in the polka dot hat shouting from the steamboat, "Save him! I don't want him to drown. I want to marry him." Someone threw a buoy made of cork into the water and it hit me right in the head. What a blow! So much for a rescue. I think they did it on purpose. In fact, someone from the steamboat yelled, "What kind of rotten rat treats a lady mouse like that? He should be left out in the sea." At that point, I didn't have a choice. I began to sink. I swam underwater, holding my breath, until I reached a secondary canal that smelled of rotten fish. Yuck! What a terrible stench! What could I do? I hid under a bridge until evening to be sure that my clingy admirer was long gone. The Bridge of Sighs. This bridge was built in the beginning of the 17th century and was a project of the architect Antonio Contino di Bernardino. He connects the Ducal Palace to the Prigioni Nuove, the new prisons. The word sighs refers to the last sigh the prisoners would give as they crossed the bridge before reaching the prisons. I was hiding. I began to hiccup. I hoped no one would hear me. Oh, how had I gotten myself into this mess? I sighed loudly, full of pity for myself. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Suddenly, a voice up on the bridge squeaked. Did you hear that? Someone is sighing. Of course, we are standing on the Bridge of Sighs. Another voice said, maybe it's a ghost. A third voice shrieked. Then I heard paws scampering overhead. Quietly, I slipped out of the water. I stood on the dock and sighed for the millionth time that night. What a fiasco! I had been so busy running away from my lady admirer, I hadn't even begun to solve the mystery in Venice. I took a deep breath and resolved to get moving. I would start looking for clues right away, even though I was soaking wet, freezing, and all about stinking of rotten fish. I tried not to think about the stench, and a cloud of flies followed me down the narrow streets of Venice. By this time, it was pretty late in the evening, and the whole city seemed deserted. That was actually a good thing, since I felt like I was playing the starring role in the horror movie Mouse Monster of the Lagoon. I slunk along, whiskers drooping, leaving puddles behind me. The few tourists I encountered made sure to keep far away from me, covering their snouts with their paws. Oh, how humiliating! I was still feeling sorry for myself when I entered Piazza San Marco. In an instant, I forgot all about my troubles and I stared at the gorgeous antique buildings, the marvelous cathedral with 4 domes, the bronze horses, and the tall bell tower. What an amazing place! Right then, a flock of rude pigeons sailed overhead, dropping small gifts on my head, my back, and my tail. Oh, how humiliating!